Well, Scream Queens accomplishes the impossible, making one of its blandest characters in season 1 somewhat interesting. Hey guys, Cameron for Scream Queens, Season 2, Episode 8, Rapunzel, and holy shit what an episode this was. I mean, I know I said last week really was more focused on Holt and his whole hand thing, which I guess we're done with now, as well as what was going on with Cassidy. And like I expected, this episode definitely had a lot more going on. We found a lot more about the Green Meanie and things like that. And like I said, they brought back a character that I previously didn't like at all and wanted nothing to do with, and actually made him somewhat interesting. And I think it's mainly just because there's a lot more focus, there's not as much going on, and I think it was a good time to bring him back. But let's just get in this episode because I really did enjoy this episode overall, especially the ending. The ending was very surprising. I wasn't expecting that at all, but we'll get right into that. One small complaint: there's no Chanel number 3 or Cassie. There's no plot progression with that at all this week. Ingrid wasn't even there, which was definitely weird. It was weird not to see Nurse Hoffell there because she's been such a substantial part of the last 2 episodes. So I don't know why she wasn't there, but either way, let's just get into this one. So we open up with Holt and Munsch. They're discussing a new patient who has arrived at Cure with severe stomach pain, and Holt casually mentions that the patient is someone who she used to date, and when they enter the room, we see it's none other than Wes, aka Grace's dad from season 1, aka one of my least favorite things about season 1. As you guys know, I thought Wes was as bland as can be. I thought there was nothing interesting about him in the entire first season. He just seemed like a serial killer that never actually happened. So the direction they take his character, you can imagine how happy I was with what they do his character in the of this episode. But I actually really like seeing Wes back. I thought they put him in a very interesting direction here. But we see that Cassidy's already performed X-rays on him and expressing that he has a tumor in his abdomen the size of a grapefruit. And Munch asks when the stomach pains began, and we get a quick, well, not actually a quick, we get like a 2-minute backstory on Wes and Munch, which I like that they remember this. I was upset, honestly, that they forgot that Wes and Munch dated. Nobody mentioned it, and he talks about how they left and he achieved his dream of growing a beard and living in like a cottage and everything, but she quickly broke it off to open up the hospital, and ever since then he was very stressed, and things turned out, didn't really turn out well, and they operate immediately and discover that Wes actually doesn't have a tumor at all. He actually has a grapefruit-sized hairball in his stomach, as weird as that is, and we find out that he has been eating his own hair out of stress, and Holt actually diagnoses him with trichophagia. And I love the line where he casually mentions Grace and says he doesn't he's so upset that no one ever mentioned her. And I mean, it's fine. No one really cared about Grace, and he really is right when no one cared about her or no one really mentioned her. And I think it's because one, the Chanel's really never cared about her all that much. Two, they were never really friends. I mean, Zayday casually mentioned her, but other than that, we haven't had any mention of Grace. We found out she was at Stanford, and I thought it was a good way to set up Wes's storyline overall. He asked for permission to leave the hospital in order to take Munch out to dinner, making Holt clearly feel jealous, and I thought this was a good way to reintroduce Wes. Right off the bat, we have a lot more interesting stuff going on with this character, and I really did like the direction they take his character in this episode. So Zayday's busy updating all of her social media pages on her phone. We kind of get a quick montage of her on Snapchat and on Instagram, only to basically kind of like a distraction, I think, just a distraction from what's going on. But she realizes that Chamberlain is commenting on everything mere seconds after she posts it, which, that's never a good situation. Especially because, we know that she clearly does not like him in the way he likes her. And she actually decides to talk to him about, which I like that she didn't try to hide it. She did, in fact, talk to him. She told him that it's a turnoff when he sends her a zillion texts and notifications in one day, and that, she likes guys that are more secretive and aren't as open about it and don't, text her every 5 seconds. But he dismisses her comments in order to focus on the Green Meanie, and together they devise this plan to steal a piece of the Green Meanie's costume to try to trace it back to a fabric store in the area, because obviously they want to do what they can to get a hold of the Green Meanie. Excuse me. But, I did like the way we did get stuff with Chamberlain Zayday, because we got nothing with them last week, and I like that they did actually do stuff with them here. But we see Brock and Chanel are having a dinner date. Holt is trying to tell Chanel a story, and it's all about, I don't really remember what it's about, but he's getting frustrated when she keeps trying to Snapchat with the dog filter, and instead of paying attention, he actually convinces her to put her phone down, explains he's trying to bond with her, but she just won't listen to him. All he's taught, he's going on, and she's just not listening. But he talks about the show MASH, and I like this comic between Chanel and Holt, because as we know, the entire season, they have been like 30 years apart, but he's liked her, and they are getting into the, post-sex stage where, this is now where the relationship is taking off and they've committed to each other, and now he's kind of starting to regret it. And he talks about the TV show MASH, and she asks if he saw about mashed potatoes, and he's clearly beginning to feel the age gap between himself and Chanel, so he actually tries to distract himself by turning up. Now, I actually love the conversation between those two, where she was talking about how Boy Meets World was the greatest show ever, and he was talking about how MASH was the greatest show ever, and neither one knew what either show was. But like, Boy Meets World's on all the time, and I know it's not actually John Stamos, but at the time John Stamos was doing Full House. You would think that Holt would have seen Boy Meets World, but I guess not. I'm surprised he didn't. It's such a popular show, but we see, things go pretty wrong when Chanel continues to take Snapchat selfies, and then he accidentally says Munch's name while in bed. So obviously, this really does not go well at all. I thought it was pretty funny seeing the scene where she says that she just lets guys have sex, and then she takes pictures and things like that, and he's saying her name, but then he talks about how he wants to be in a bath, and she knows that he didn't say Bath, he did in fact say Kathy, he didn't say Bathy. I thought that was pretty funny overall, but the way that scene was done, like I said, I think this was a good conflict with them, and I think they set that up pretty well here. You can tell, obviously, that spark is very much waning down, like what he saw in Chanel, he's very much losing, and it's kind of sad to see, but I think it was definitely an inevitable direction I think we kind of all expected. So back at the hospital, Zayday and Chamberlain are laying their trap, and it works perfectly. We see the Green Meanie sneaks up on them, but they have come prepared. They manage to snag a torn piece of the Green Meanie's costume right before he runs away, and Zayday plans to visit the fabric store the next day in order to get some answers because she wants to crack this case. She wants to be the one to do it on her own. I like that. I like that Zayday's doing this on her own. Nobody else seems to be that interested. And again, I think it's because they're just not much of a the Green Meanie's just not much of a threat right now. But I do like the way that Zayday is trying to lay out answers and trying to figure out what's going on here. But the next day we see Holt and Munch are talking about his date with Chanel, and Holt reveals to her that things really aren't going well with Chanel, that he actually still has feelings for Munch, which I knew this was going to come up eventually. He had sex with her once, it's coming up, and of course, Chanel does walk in as Holt is leaving, and she has a showdown with Munch in her office because she knows that something is definitely going down between her and Holt. She doesn't know what capacity, but she knows something is going down there, and it makes sense, obviously. I mean, you can tell that definitely something's going on. And he tried to hide it, but, there's only so far you can go with that. And I like the way that Chanel can tell there's definitely something going on. So I did like this face-off between those two. I thought that was pretty funny. But Chamberlain turns to the Chanels for love advice, who we didn't see number 5 or number 3 at all do. But I did like seeing them here. I just kind of want them to do more of them in these last 2 episodes because Hester's been a big part of the season. We know that she's been involved with Green Me in some way. So I'm hoping that we get more focus there in the last 2 episodes. But we'll have to see. But he reveals that he sometimes doesn't just double text Zayday, he actually triple texts her. So this is a completely bad situation. He says that sometimes he'll text her she's asleep, but then he figures that she must be asleep. So he texts her to apologize, but then she doesn't text back, so he texts her again. And Chanel obviously tells him to stop, so she actually takes his phone and fiddles with it, explaining that she's blocked Zayday's number, but only temporarily, this way that he can't text her. And every day at 9 p.m., Zayday's number will be unblocked, and his phone will release any texts or calls that he might have missed. And this is actually a pretty good scenario. Actually, I feel like more people should do this. I don't know why more people don't do this, because you won't feel as overbearing and as foreboding, and as he is, because he really is feeling very overbearing. You can tell that Zayday's not really into it. And I definitely like that whole idea that he can do this. I don't know how exactly Chanel could do this, but I thought that was pretty cool to see. But Zayday heads the fabric shop solo with the swatch of material from the Green Meanie's costume. It turns out the shopkeeper recognized the fabric, and he reveals that there haven't been a handful of Green Meanie costumes made over the years, which is interesting to see. Now, the first costume we found was made in 1986, which is in line with the first bouts of killings, and he explains there were 3 additional Green Meanie costumes ordered in recent months. The first and the third costumes were ordered by an old woman with nice hands, and the second one was ordered by male. And of course, we know that the old woman was, in fact, Hoffell, and then the second one was ordered by mail. And Zayday determines that the old woman must be Jane, so she heads directly to her house on her way. She tries to text and call Chamberlain. Because her number has been blocked, he doesn't answer. So obviously she thinks that something's going down there, and I thought it was definitely kind of sad to see, because you can tell she does kind of like him, but he's not answering, so that was definitely sad. But then we get by far one of the creepiest scenes on the show, but also a scene that I definitely really enjoyed. We see Zayday, she goes to Jane's house, she bangs on the door waving the piece of green meanie's fabric, and she threatens to go to the police if she doesn't let her inside. And once inside her home, they start talking, Jane fixes her a cup of tea, and ends up confessing that she and her family were actually behind many of the murders at the hospital. And we actually learn that Jane's brother was actually first Green Meanie in 1986. Now, this I never really thought of, but yeah, it makes sense. I mean, clearly her and her family have had out for this hospital for a long time. And we know that, Jane's brother's baby was in fact, the one that we saw in the first episode, and his wife, when his wife died and everything, and she raised her son to pledge that if the hospital ever opened again, they would start killing people until they had to close. So it is exactly what I've been thinking, that they are doing this just so they can close, and that's why patients are getting killed, that's why all these people are getting killed now. It's all so they can finally close the hospital, because if there's more, if there's so much controversy and so much, bad press, then they'll just have to close it. And I really do think the season is going to end with Cure closing. I really do see it that way. But before Zayday can ask any more questions, she starts feeling woozy, and Jane tells Zayday that the tea was actually poisoned. She found, and Zayday is in fact being kidnapped again. We see it's just like back to season 1, but it actually makes sense this time. I felt like season 1, there wasn't really that sense of urgency. It didn't really make sense why it happened, but here I think it definitely does make sense. And obviously, Jane's going to cover up any sort of evidence or anything like that. She doesn't want anyone to know her plan. And Zayday, she knows, is onto something, so she's going to try to do whatever she can to get her away from that. But Chanel's lamenting the other Chanel's about her problems with Holt, and Hester says that her problem is about needing to understand Holt's generation. And she proposed that they throw him a themed dinner party to make him feel welcome and at home. And Chanel thinks it's really a great idea, so all the girls get to work. But then they probably do the worst thing ever. We see that he arrives at the home and is all like decked out in like World War II era memorabilia. Number 5's in a Shirley Temple costume. Chanel's dressed entirely in retro fashion. She's talking to him like you would in the 1940s. It's a very strange scene, but basically, he asks, how old he thinks she is, and she talks about how, because of MASH, she thought that the show took place in World War II, and of course, he said it wasn't. He's obviously very offended, so he asks how old, he thinks she is, and, Chanel defends herself, saying that it's hard to tell, and he leaves in a huff, and I don't blame him. I mean, after something like that really is kind of offensive that she thought he was that old. I mean, I don't even think that John Stamos looks that old. John Stamos still looks 25. Like, seriously, John Stamos does not look old at all. He looks exactly how he did on Full House. I don't really think he's changed at all, and I don't really know why Chanel thinks that he was that old. I get her reasoning, but it was just kind of bizarre, really. I thought it was a fun scene, definitely. It was funny, but it was just kind of weird the way it was done. But again, Scream Queens, it's weird in general, so I'm able to get behind that. I thought that was kind of funny to see overall. But again, you can tell how they're really struggling to have problems. I thought overall, as silly as it was, it did kind of make sense why Chanel would think this and why her and Holt just have such a big age gap and why she really doesn't understand anything about him and he really doesn't understand anything about her. And that's something that we really haven't touched upon yet that I like that we showed in this episode. So while this is going down, Munsch and Wes are having a date of their own. We see the romantic evening soon turns chaotic when the Green Meanie shows up, and Munsch and Wes end up underneath the bed. The Green Meanie stabs wildly at the mattress. Luckily, they manage to push the bed frame onto the Green Meanie, causing him to dart out the window in fear, and Munsch speculates that someone doesn't want them to be back together, so she thinks that that someone is Holt, which she thinks that the Green Meanie is Holt. I knew that it was not Holt. I think it'd be way too predictable, and especially with Holt having a new hand and not really having any sort of, like, killing fantasies, I didn't think that Holt was going to be the one to be the Green Meanie, but Holt to Chanel's house. He expresses that he had been doing some thinking, and he came to the conclusion that Chanel's dinner party idea, while it really did freak him out, it actually was really sweet. And he tells her that he wants to be in a relation with her, and she actually seems really happy about it. I love the scene where she thought he was going to propose, and he said, oh, no, sometimes just have to do it with my leg. I thought that was pretty funny. But he goes directly to Munsch after this and basically tells her that the only reason getting back together with Chanel is so that way she won't suspect that, she won't suspect that he's having an affair with Munsch, and Wes won't suspect that those two are canoodling, which of course they're going to be, and he suggests they continue to date their respective partners while having a long-term affair, something that obviously Chanel will not be happy about, and I'm pretty sure she's probably going to find out, because Chanel finds out everything, and I don't think this is going to go as smoothly as Holt thinks it is. It's a good plan, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think think this is really going to go that well, and I think Holt really needs to rethink about what he's doing, because I really don't think it's going to go that well. But Chamberlain's been doing his nightly duty of removing the medical waste from the hospital when he comes across Wes's hairball, and he notices something really strange about it. He's mixed into the wet hair are two very suspicious objects. One's a receipt for a machete and a piece of green fabric, and now we know what's going down here. He decides to go confront Wes about these items, and we get this awesome scene where we have a very detailed confession with Wes where he explains that Grace did in fact go to Stanford, but it was the Stanford Mental Institution. We find out that he was actually furious with the Chanels after Grace became mixed up with them. She actually became very fucked up after what happened, I guess after she left a sorority, and he expressed the experience with the Chanels changed his daughter for the worse, and we learned that Grace actually went to a psychiatric hospital after all the season 1 drama went down, that Wes decided to copy the Green Meanie murders in order to enact revenge in Grace's name, and basically ate anything he could to try to get the hair stuck in there. You know, he knew it get stuck in there. This would give him a reason to come to the hospital. It was honestly all really well thought out, and he did this to enact revenge in Grace's name, and just when we think things are going to get really bad, he starts laughing. He tells Chamberlain that he's kidding, and I'm like, really? There's no way that he is, but luckily he's not. He does in fact stab Chamberlain. He slumps to the ground, and Chamberlain's dead. We see then the worst thing would happen, where his phone starts blowing up with all the texts and calls he missed from Zayday earlier, and that is the way the episode ends. Really crazy stuff overall that I definitely really enjoy, but let's just get into this episode because I really do want to talk about it. So I know a lot of people complain about how the body count has been significantly lower than it has last season, but I've actually been okay with that. I feel like they definitely have killed the right amount of people. Yeah, I think some of them have just been because they need to kill someone, because, you know, they've killed, like, the Chanels. I think this is definitely the first major death since Chad, and I like that Chamberlain was killed, actually. I feel like he was kind of dead weight in the show. I don't really know where else they were going to go with him, especially after the Zayday storyline, so I think it makes sense why he got killed. And I like that he was killed and not Zayday, because like I said, I think Zayday should be the final girl, and I like that Chamberlain was the one killed, and it wasn't Zayday. Zayday is in fact alive, but she's on to something, and definitely she's going to definitely pay for what she did. I think she's going to be tortured, but I don't think she's going to be killed. I think she is going to be saved. But what a twist with Wes. I mean, I saw this coming. I heard something about on Twitter that he was going to reveal to be the killer, which I don't know who spoiled that, but someone leaked it out. It kind of sucks, but I really do like that Wes is the Green Meanie. It makes him so much more interesting. It actually gives him something to do, and he's actually a killer. And now it makes sense, like I said, why so much of, I think, his, dialogue in season 1 made him sound like he was a killer, because he actually kind of is, we see. And I like the direction that this is going, with him being a killer and him, like I said, coming to the hospital to find a way to go after all the patients, and now that he's there, he can kill anyone he wants, and I definitely feel we're going to get a lot more kills from Wes, because clearly he wants to kill the Chanels, and I don't know why he hasn't killed the Chanels. The one thing that doesn't really make sense to me is that why would, the Green Meanie, aka Cassidy or Nurse Hoffell, go after Wes and Munsch? Why would they do that? Unless Wes is not working exclusively with Nurse Hoffell and Cassidy, which I kind of think is true, because as we know, they don't know who the third Green Meanie is. So I'm thinking that he's not actually working with them. This is a completely separate mission. He's just kind of emulating what the Green Meanies are doing, which I think makes perfect sense. His storyline is not all go with Jane's, and I think that's why he isn't really working with them exclusively, but I do like the direction this is going. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Wes overall, and I like that they actually did make him interesting. They did it. They did it. They actually made Wes interesting. Do I want to see Grace again? No, I really don't. I don't want to see her in a mental institution. I think by telling us she was in a mental institution is fine. Maybe she'll be at the end of the season. I don't know, but I'm just glad she wasn't part of the main narrative, because, again, I found her really boring, and everything that Zayday said is true, that she was just she was a fun girl. There was really nothing about her, but she was whatever. And it makes sense when no one really remembers her, because she just wasn't a memorable character. I found her completely bland, and I like that she's not there this season. But I do like the direction this Holt and Munch affair is going, but Chanel's going to find out. If Holt thinks that he's going to be able to do this behind Chanel's back, he has another thing coming. like the fact we found a lot more about Jane and Cassidy. I knew that was going down. I like that we now know more what's going on there, so I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. And then my biggest question is really what's going to happen with Zayday. I know that Zayday is obviously going to be tortured, but I don't really know what's going to happen there. I think that's going to be very interesting. We didn't see Cassidy or Nurse Hoffell a lot in this episode. We only saw Cassidy like that one scene. I'm hoping we get more with them, and I think we will, because we saw Chanel number 3 and Cassidy in the promo for next week, so I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen there. But overall, guys, really enjoyed this episode. Love the revelation with Wes. I think that the ending scene really did make up for it. There were some silly things here, like the Munsch and Holt stuff I wasn't exactly into, but I liked where that's going overall. I thought it was fun, and there wasn't anything that really bored me, so I definitely liked this episode more than last week. I thought last week was fine, but this one definitely was a lot better. I overall really did enjoy this episode. Let me know what you guys saw this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be, I think, for a movie review, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.